मीडिया सेंटर में प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस को संबोधित पी चिदम्बरम कर रहे हैं, साथ उनके गौरव वल्लभ मौजूद हैं। आपको सीधा लिए चलेंगे प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस की ओर।
Kindly focus on the opening statement. Of course, we will take any other question, but kindly focus on the opening statement, and let's spend the first few minutes at least on the economy.
They have decided to ban wheat exports.
On the GST, we believe that the compensation period of 5 years that will expire on 30th of June 2022 must, and there is no quibble on that, must be extended. It must be extended by at least another 3 years. We would strongly disapprove if any attempt is made by the central government or the Union Finance Minister to railroad the GST Council and prevent it from recommending an extension of the GST compensation period by another 3 years. We will strongly oppose that, and we will insist that it be extended. On the wheat export, I presume that it is because the central government has failed to procure enough wheat. It's not that wheat production has come down. It's more or less the same. In fact, it may be marginally more. Yesterday, I was told by the Chhattisgarh minister that they have been able to procure 97 lakh tons of paddy. So if procurement had taken place, there would not be any need to ban the export of wheat. But let me add, banning export of wheat is an anti-farmer measure. It deprives the farmer of reaping the benefit of higher export prices. It is an anti-farmer measure. And I'm not surprised. This government has never been very friendly to the farmer. You know better than I do that reset is a different word and review or reconsider is a different word. I don't know if you remember 1991. I remember it very vividly. I have first-hand experience of the policy making of 1991. But we are now 30 years down the road. The world has changed. India has changed. A reset means taking into account global and domestic developments and fine-tuning the policies that have obviously given us benefits. But clearly a time for reset has come. On your second question, it's highly technical. I'm not sure how many in your audience would be interested in that. There is a fiscal deficit, but that fiscal deficit includes what you spend on social services. You can't say social services expenditure adds to the fiscal deficit, which adds to the public debt. And that would be a complete perversion of priorities. A fiscal deficit is made up of all expenditure minus all revenues. One expenditure is social services. The prudent and wise approach is to fix the priority for social services expenditure. And in our view, if 10% of the bottom of India is in extreme poverty, and our rank in the global hunger index is 101 out of 116, these are clearly indicators that we must spend more on social services.
Hello.
Request everyone to use the mic so that others in the hall can hear your question. Supriya. Good.
So the question is that you have said in your opening remark that inflation is fueled by the government also. The government is fueling the inflation. But one of the reasons which is coming from the other side is that there is war going on between Russia and Ukraine, and that is why there is an impact which has led on the oil prices, which has led to this inflation. What's your take on this entire narrative, which is that because there is a war going on, that's why there's an impact on the domestic or the Indian economy also?
It's a lame excuse. India cannot blame the rise in oil prices as a reason for this high inflation. This high inflation, this inflationary trend was noticed even pre-Ukraine war. The high fuel taxes, the high administered prices, say, on cooking gas, and the high GST rates all predate the Ukraine war. Next, they will say Mr. Putin asked us to impose his taxes. That's rubbish. The Ukraine war has added to our problems, but you should have taken preemptive action. It's now widely believed that the RBI was behind the curve. And why was the RBI behind the curve? I suspect RBI was behind the curve because the government nudged it to go slow. So I don't think simple, lame excuses like Ukraine war can explain why there is such high WPI inflation and CPI inflation.
If you can pass the mic to Saubhadra. Supriya, here on your left hand side. Quickly. Saubhadra from ST. After that, Anjali.
Mr. Chidambaram, my question to you. Sir, you mentioned about the recalibration of economic policies, and you also mentioned that from 1991 we've gone a long way. Sir, would you like to tell us one or two examples of what you think that, specific policy interventions or amendments of the policy which are required now?
I wish I could tell you, but I can't, because deliberations are underway, and deliberations must be followed by decisions. The deliberations are in a group of 60 persons, and the decisions have to be taken by the Congress Working Committee. So I wish I could tell you, but I'm sorry, until the decisions are taken, I can't tell you. I can only tell you our thinking. Our thinking is 30 years down the line, while we acknowledge that we have reaped enormous benefits as a result of liberalization, we take into account global and domestic developments and reset our policies for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Anjali from UNI. After
Hi,
that,
sir.
Sanjeev Chopra.
So price rise definitely is the biggest challenge in front of. So inflation is today definitely the biggest challenge for people. But apart from that, there are a lot of things, as you said, which are wrong with the economic policy, which have led to this situation. But when it comes to the people, mostly they do not understand economic policies and matters. So my question is that would you also be doing something to take this message of what is wrong with the economy to the people?
Well, if the message has not reached the people, we plead guilty, but we also plead guilty on your behalf. We are collectively guilty. So allow me to plead guilty on your behalf also. So if you cooperate with us, we can take the message to the people. The people I meet in my village or town feel the pinch of inflation. It's not yet become a large protest, but it will become. If inflation continues to rise at this rate, it will become a large protest.
Sanjeev Group.
Sir, you've talked about, you've stressed on reset of the economic policies, keeping into consideration the latest global and global trends. So would you be preparing a roadmap for suggesting to the government on what action needs to be taken, or some kind of suggestions, for the on the recalibration of the policies?
Do you really believe that anything that we say will be accepted by the government? If you are an optimist. We will prepare a set of policies that will serve the people of India, our economic interests, as the Congress party sees it, and we will take it to the people. I don't believe that the government is willing to listen to anyone, much less the Congress party.
So my question is to you that what's the view of the Economic Committee about the taking petrol, diesel under GST? Because it is really hurting the people of the common man of our country. And second is, what is the view of your committee about the states demanding the GST compensation, their dues? That's all burdening the financial condition of the states.
I've answered the second question when I answered Mr. Prabhu's first question. I've already answered the second question. On the first question, there is a complete breakdown of trust between the central government and the state governments. And if you think that only the non-BJP state governments have expressed this breakdown of trust, you're wrong. Privately, we know that even BJP finance ministers who attend the GST Council have expressed their dismay and concern about this complete breakdown of trust. Given this complete breakdown of trust, there is no way, there's no chance at all of the present government making even any headway in trying to persuade states to bring petrol and diesel under GST. There's no chance of that happening under this government.
Hello. All are seeking more support from central government, economical support, like GST, time-to-time reimbursements like that. So how do you see this? People are suffering from Tamil Nadu, kind of Kerala at all. So how do you see this? Time-to-time GST reimbursements, and they are seeking more support from central governments on the schemes which comes under the state governments.
This is not Tamil Nadu and Kerala. 78,704 crores are pending from the central government to the state governments as on 31/3/22. Let me repeat that number. Rupees 78,704 crore is pending. We are already in the middle of May, and this amount has not been paid. And the compensation period will come to an end on 30th of June 2022. I believe it's the unanimous demand of all the state governments that the compensation period must be extended and arrears of GST must be paid forthwith.
Sir, because you're talking about the reset, within the economic committee, whether there's a possibility of a resolution saying that the next Congress's economic line will be taking a step back from the liberalization policies that it's initiated.
You're completely wrong. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. We are not stepping back on liberalization. We are stepping forward post-liberalization. So please don't make a mistake in your report. We are not stepping back from liberalization. We are stepping forward post-liberalization, taking into account global and domestic developments.
Yeah, and also, sir, how do you plan to politically counter BJP's policies? The BJP con Arvind Subramaniam, he was talking about providing tangibles like free houses or ration scheme where people are lifted out of extreme poverty rather than being concerned about rising inequalities. So how do you politically counter the BJP with an economic kind of a framework?
Rising inequalities and extreme poverty are not contradictory. Extreme poverty is one of the effects of rising inequalities. Anyway, I don't want to elaborate on that. Remember, there was a India Shining campaign in 2003, 2004. We were able to take our message to the people and roundly, soundly defeat the India Shining campaign. What the Modi government is doing is another repeat of an India Shining campaign. And we are confident that when the Congress Working Committee deliberates after the Shivir and takes the appropriate decisions, we would be able to put forward an economic program that will appeal to the people and will defeat the hype and the hyperbole and the exaggeration of the Modi government.
Sir, as you stated eloquently about the dire state of economy,
Just keep the mic closer to you.
dire state of economy, do you fear that Sri Lanka-like situation emerge in India also?
Now, I don't wish it, nor do I fear it. We still have a democratic process, although attempts are made by the Modi government to suppress voices in parliament and outside. We still have a democratic process, and I don't wish a Sri Lanka kind of crisis here. I don't fear a Sri Lanka kind of crisis here, but the democratic opposition must be allowed to speak and protest.
Sir, one more thing. Other day,
Sir,
Congress party
We'll
stated
take another question, sir.
We'll come back to you.
सर this is सोमनाथ रॉय फ्रॉम संबाद प्रतिदिन सर
There, on the left side.
सर एक तरफ तो ऐसा महंगाई बेरोजगारी ऐसे बहुत सारे मुद्दे हैं, लेकिन उसके बावजूद ये जो एक के बाद एक स्टेट्स का जो रिजल्ट आ रहा है, क्या आपको क्या लगता है कि आपके तरफ से क्या जनता के तरफ कोई मैसेज नहीं जा पा रहा है या जनता समझ नहीं पा रहा है, इसको ठीक करने का उपाय क्या है?
But this is a very general question. I've said that the people feel the pinch of inflation, of loss of jobs, of non-creation of jobs. People feel the pinch. You talk to families, the families feel the pinch. When I was in Goa and I did some house-to-house campaigning, every other house, and I'm not exaggerating, in every other house, the plea was, I have a son, I have a daughter, I have a nephew who's educated, does not have a job, can you help us find a job? So they feel the pinch in their daily lives. Therefore, I think we are right in our assessment of the mood of the people, and therefore we are pleading for measures to alleviate their burdens and misery.
Premanshu, Shil Manoj, and then Janendra and Vikrant.
Sir, yesterday Congress President talked about this permanent state of polarization. So how will you ensure these economic issues get its focus in this situation? And secondly, sir, yesterday in your group, Rahul Gandhi participated. Can you share his views?
No, Mr. Rahul Gandhi was present. He didn't participate in our discussions.
Pranavji, what do you say about economic issues?
See, it's for the people to decide what is more important. In my view, the fact that over 50% of women are anemic, a large proportion of children are anemic, stunted and wasted, that should hit us rather than should somebody eat halal meat or jata meat.
तो देखिए, लगातार आपको तस्वीरें भी दिखा रहे हैं और सुना भी रहे हैं। पी चिदम्बरम यहाँ मीडिया के सवालों का जवाब देते हुए और मुख्य तौर पर इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट्स पर बात करते हुए फिलहाल नजर आ रहे हैं। और उन्होंने कहा कि केंद्र की नीतियां कहीं ना कहीं इकोनॉमिकली अगर देखी जाए तो वैश्विक स्तर पर घट रही है। इंडेक्स में लगातार घटौती हो रही है हर क्षण पर। रूस और यूक्रेन में युद्ध को लेकर जिस तरीके से कयास लगाते जाते रहे हैं और केंद्र की ओर से भी कहा जाता रहा है कि ईंधन में बढ़ती कीमतों का कारण वो भी एक है। इस पर भी पी चिदम्बरम ने कहा कि इस चीज़ को जिम्मेदार ठहराना महंगाई के लिए फिलहाल वास्तविक नहीं और तथ्यात्मक नहीं, और तमाम उन सवालों का जो कि मीडिया कर रही है फिलहाल उनसे मुखातिब होते हुए पी चिदम्बरम साथ ही में मौजूद हैं उनके गौरव वल्लभ भी और सुप्रिया सुनेत भी इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में। और देखिए दूसरा दिन आज नव संकल्प चिंतन शिविर का दूसरे दिन का आगाज हुआ है इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के माध्यम से, जिसके बाद में 10 बजे से पॉलिटिकल सेशंस भी शुरू हो जाएंगे। इसके बाद दोपहर में लंच ब्रेक।
देखा था यूपीए सरकार पर निशाना साधते हुए, आपकी सरकार पर निशाना साधते हुए, तो जो मौजूदा हाल है ये किस तरह रुपया कमजोर हो रहा है तो आम लोगों को क्या दिक्कत हो रही है, इसको कैसे आप कन्वे करेंगे, ये सवाल है। किस तरह से लोगों की जेब ढीली हो रही है। दूसरी बात यह है कि चिंतन शिविर
I remember candidate Modi said that if we are elected to power, we'll bring the rupee dollar rate to 40 rupees. And the late Miss Sushma Swaraj also said that in several meetings. It was, of course, a completely wrong statement. I mean, it betrayed a complete lack of understanding of how the exchange rate moves. So while we understand that the exchange rate will move according to the market, what is happening now is because of your inability to take the necessary measures. It is inflation and the threat of higher interest rates which is causing an outflow of US dollars, apart from other reasons. The two main reasons are high inflation and the threat of higher interest rates. Now, these are matters which were under the control of the RBI and the government has failed. I charge the government with complete failure. So unless they understand the causes of the sharp decline in the rupee dollar value, I don't expect them to take remedial measures either. But we will continue to speak, we will continue to write, pointing out their failures.
सर एक अगर
एक ही सवाल रहने दें, बहुत लोग हैं बेबी,
छोटा सा समझने के लिए
और लोग भी हैं, विक्रांत हैं, क्विकली जल्दी करो। अदिति
सर एक ये पूछना था कि चिंतन शिविर को लेके कहा जा रहा है कि ये पॉलिटिकल शिविर है और कोई मैनिफेस्टो यहाँ से नहीं निकलने वाला। ऐसे में जो इकोनॉमिक इश्यूज पे जो कमेटी बनी है आप लोगों की, इसके पास कितना स्कोप है? क्योंकि ये कहा जा रहा है कि ये पॉलिटिकल शिविर है और कोई मैनिफेस्टो यहाँ से जारी नहीं होने वाला, तो आप लोगों के पास कितना स्कोप है? आप क्या कल हम लोगों के सामने लाने वाले हैं, इस पे अगर आप थोड़ा प्रकाश डाल सकें। ठीक है अभी।
We are not writing a manifesto today. This is a Nav Sankalp Shivir, which means a new resolution. We have to make new resolutions on our political positions, our economic positions, our social positions. We have to make new formulations. What shape these formulations will take, I can't say. But eventually, it will get reflected in the Manifesto 2024.
Vikrant after that. Yeah.
You spoke about unemployment. The government, which is among the largest employers, particularly in the railways, has put a complete freeze on recruitment for the last 2 years. First citing COVID and then other problems. There's been no recruitment in the armed forces. There's been hardly any recruitment in military forces. There's been no recruitment in the lower levels of the scientific establishment, scientific officers and so on. What is your view on that? All the other restrictions, COVID restrictions have been lifted. You are having elections, you are having religious gatherings, but recruitment continues to be a big problem, and it's creating a lot of discrepancies and anomalies in the armed forces on account of seniority.
You remember that in the 2019 manifesto we said of the first things we will do is to fill all vacancies in the central government. That's what we promised in the 2019 manifesto. So did the BJP. But since 2019, now we are in 2022, the number of vacancies has actually increased. In railway, paramilitary, the number of vacancies has increased. Firstly, this is anti-youth. This is anti-poor. This is anti-scheduled caste, anti-scheduled tribe. This is even anti the economically weaker sections, for which there is some reservation somewhere. The point is, if you don't fill vacancies in the government, in the broader government, capital G, and all its organizations, where will the young men and women of India find jobs? Yes, the private sector will throw up some jobs, but the government, as the biggest employer in this country, simply has downed its shutters. It is not willing to appoint anyone. I think this is a terrible onslaught on the rights of young men and women, especially those who have completed a degree or two and are looking for jobs. I think this is anti-poor, anti-youth, anti-scheduled caste, anti-scheduled tribe. But then, in our view, this government is anti-people.
Sir, I quickly wrap up. Last three questions: Vikrant, Vijayalakshmi, and Rajita.
सर आप लोग अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट की, इन्फ्लेशन की तमाम बातें कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जब आप 91 में मिनिस्टर थे नरसिम्हा राव सरकार में, उस वक्त में जो एक्ट आया था और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने भी कहा था कि जहां पर जो 1947 में वर्शिप की पोजीशन है वही कंटिन्यू रहनी चाहिए, लेकिन आज की डेट में कहीं ज्ञानवापी में सर्वे हो रहा है, कहीं ताजमहल को लेकर के बात हो रही है, तो ये चीज़ें कैसे आप रिफ्लेक्ट करेंगी जनता के बीच? वर्शिप एक्ट जो आया था 1991 में, वो एक तरफ है और ज्ञानवापी सर्वे भी हो रहा है बनारस में प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की कॉन्स्टिट्यूंसी में.
Well, I don't understand your question. I've answered. There is no meaningful debate when you say it's either polarization or economic policy. I don't understand that. I think economic policies are the lifeline of a country. It touches everybody. Polarization is only for a political purpose. It's not either you debate this or debate that.
No, sir,
we will oppose polarization, but we will plead for sensible, sane economic policies.
Sir, I am technically asking, worship act जब है, उसके बाद में क्या ज्ञानवापी मस्जिद में सर्वे होना चाहिए?
Oh, the Places of Worship Act. The Places of Worship Act was passed after deep consideration in Mr. Narasimha Rao's government. The only exception in that act was to the Ram Janmabhoomi. We believe that all other places of worship should remain in the status they are and they were. We should not make an attempt to change the status of any place of worship. That will only lead to huge conflict, and it is to avoid such conflict that the Narasimha Rao government passed the Places of Worship Act.
Vijayalakshmi,
last question.
And another
sir, I just wanted to ask.
She's already asked one.
Yeah, two of them.
Sir, ever since the Modi government has come to power, economy has been one major focus of opposition, especially of Congress party. You've been attacking and alleging that this government has failed on that front. But despite that, in terms of electoral politics, it hasn't brought anything in terms of electoral politics. You've only been losing elections. Is there something wrong with your communication policy that you've not been able to communicate it to your electorate, the failure of the government? And if it is so, is Congress party mulling or discussing all that in the Shivir, in your committee that has been formed, how to communicate effectively to your electorate or to people?
You're right. If we have failed to communicate to the people the distress, the distressful situation in which the country's economy is, yes, we admit that. We should sharpen our communication skills we also request your cooperation and support in conveying the messages.
Ranjita.
हाँ सर, यहाँ पार्टी
हाँ, go ahead.
आवाज आ रही है?
आ रही है।
आप पार्टी और देश के अलग अलग चीज़ों पर चिंता करने के लिए आए हुए हैं। सवाल ये कि जो जम्मू कश्मीर में हो रहा है, कश्मीरी पंडित की वहाँ हत्या हो गई और उसके बाद उनकी कम्युनिटी जो है वो जम्मू कश्मीर के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के खिलाफ वहाँ धरना दे रही है, किस तरह से आप इसे देखते हैं?
Jammu Kashmir, the Kashmiri Pandit boy was killed and the community is protesting against the government.
We condemn the killing of the Kashmiri Pandit. We think that killing is not an answer to any problem. There are genuine issues in Kashmir. They must be addressed having regard to the history of Kashmir, the history of the accession of the state of Jammu and Kashmir to India, and the developments in the last 75 years. These problems can be addressed only by a dialogue between the government and the people of Jammu and Kashmir. But this government is not indulging in any dialogue. But that doesn't justify any killing. The Congress party is opposed to any killing by militants or indiscriminate killing by the security forces or religious hatred prompted killings. Any kind of killing we condemn in the most unequivocal terms. And we are sorry for the family of the person who died. We convey our deepest condolences, but we condemn in unequivocal terms any kind of killing.
They still want to ask more questions, but it's already 10:30. They still want to ask more questions.
No. We have to resume.
We have a meeting schedule at 10:30. Some other time we'll again do.
Thank you.
तो देखिए, प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस को आप लगातार सुन रहे थे और पी चिदम्बरम यहां पर केंद्र की आर्थिक नीतियों पर निशाना साधते हुए नजर आए। उन्होंने कहा कि जिस तरह से वर्तमान में लोकतांत्रिक पद्धति चल रही है, कई राज्यों का जीएसटी बकाया है और उसी जीएसटी बकाये होने की वजह से महंगाई लगातार बढ़ रही है। इसमें रूस और यूक्रेन के युद्ध को दुहाई देना बिल्कुल भी तथ्यात्मक नहीं है। तो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के दौरान मीडिया से मुखातिब हुए और अब जो पॉलिटिकल सेशन है वो शुरू होने वाला है। साथ में देखिए, सुप्रिया सुनेत और गौरव वल्लभ भी उनके नजर आए। उन्होंने तमाम सवालों का जवाब दिया और मुख्य तौर पर उन्होंने कहा कि केंद्र की आर्थिक नीतियों की वजह से फिलहाल देश पिछड़ रहा है, देश में महंगाई बढ़ रही है और बीपीएल परिवारों की संख्या भी लगातार बढ़ रही है। अगर बात यूपीए सरकार के कार्यकाल की जाए तो उस समय महंगाई इतनी नहीं थी और रूपरेखा भी इस तरीके की बनाई गई थी कि बीपीएल परिवारों की श्रेणी यहां पर कम हो, लोगों को समान अवसर मिल पाए और सुविधाएं भी मिल पाएं। और तस्वीरें फिलहाल आपको दिखा रहे थे मीडिया सेंटर में, जहां उदयपुर के होटल ताज अरावली में जो कांग्रेस का नव संकल्प चिंतन शिविर है वो जारी है। इस दौरान मीडिया से मुखातिब होते हुए पी चिदम्बरम जिन्होंने जानकारी ये भी दी और प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के उस वक्तव्य को, संबोधन को भी दोहराया जो बयान उन्होंने गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री रहते हुए दिया था। कहा था कि अगर देश में भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार आने वाले दिनों में आती है तो डॉलर को प्रति रुपए जो डॉलर है उसकी कीमत 40 रुपए के आसपास की जाएगी, लेकिन फिलहाल वर्तमान में अगर डॉलर की बात की जाए तो वो 77 रुपए अपने आज तक के सबसे बड़े रिकॉर्ड पर है। इन सभी मुद्दों को उन्होंने इस प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में मीडिया के साथ साझा किया और साथ ही संयुक्त सवाल लेते हुए जवाब देते ही भी नजर आए। तो नव संकल्प शिविर के तहत हाथ पर चिंतन और देखिए 2 दिन आज बीत चुके हैं, दूसरा दिन शुरू हो गया है। प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के साथ इस दिन का आगाज किया गया, जिसके बाद में अब पॉलिटिकल सेशंस रहेंगे।